You can create automated workflows for almost any scenario you can think of. When a proposal is signed, an invoice is paid, a contract is signed, a contact is created, or a form is submitted. You can trigger a series of different actions, can be simple or can be incredibly complex with different branches and levels. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. In this example right here, we have an invoice reminder. So just before we head and get started, I want to show you how to access workflows. From your main menu, click on workflows. You can create as many workflows as you want. And then in this example, we have the invoice reminder. I'm going to click through. Now, the trigger is where you select the trigger, as in what happens, what should happen before this entire workflow, automated workflow triggers, right? So again, like I said, you can trigger it when a task is created or updated or deleted and so on for almost all the other entities. In this example, it's when an invoice is created. And we are going to select the method as an all invoices. So whenever any invoice is created across the entire workspace, trigger this automation. Now, the next step is checking. We delay the check for 3 days. So after 3 days, after you delay the check for 3 days, then do another condition check. And in this example, it's true, false. Has the invoice been paid or not? So what's going to happen here is that once an invoice is created, we're going to create a delay of 3 days. And once that delay has reached 3 days, it will do a check. Was the invoice paid or not? And what we're going to do is that once the invoice is not paid, once it checks the invoice is not paid, it will send an email to remind the client of the overdue payment. Now, before I go any further, I want to explain the entity selector right here. So this is incredibly powerful. From the entity selector, you can select the entity that you want to check the condition against. And in this example, we are checking the invoice that was triggered as part of this workflow. So after you select the entity, you can select a selection method. And there are 3. Invoice from this workflow. So invoice created or updated within this particular workflow that we're in right now. Specific invoice. So you absolutely select an invoice within the workflow, within the workspace that has been created previously outside of this workflow, or using filters. So whenever a particular invoice matches a certain set of filters. This is incredibly powerful because it opens the door for you to almost create any scenario of automation. Now, in this example, what we've said is the entity that we want to do the check against is an invoice that is part of this workflow, and it is the triggered invoice, as in the invoice that triggered the entire automation. Now, going further, what we're checking for here is false, as in the invoice was not paid. And if so, then send this email, attach the invoice to the email as well. Now, this is another powerful feature called connections. So from connections, it allows you to connect a relationship between this particular invoice or field, or let's say, communication set with another entity. It can be a contract, a contact, a form, invoice, proposal, task, any other entity. And again, they can be part of this workflow or something specific or something absolute or something based on filters. In this example, what you want to do is we want to connect the invoice in question. For example, the triggered invoice, part of this workflow, because what is the connection going to do? It's going to pull in the details of that particular invoice so you can use it as variables. For instance, here, the ability to specify the invoice name, the client name of that particular invoice is by connecting the invoice first so you can use its details. And in this example, as I'm sending an email, I want to say like invoice name, client name, and then the invoice number, and then the amount due. All this information are being pulled from the connected invoice, which is the triggered invoice that triggered this workflow. And then here also I can attach an attachment. So I can basically say attach the invoice as well from the connection. So you can imagine how powerful this can be. So I just wanted to explain both the entity selector and the connections, because these two can change the game for you when you're creating automated workflows. Now, this can go as deep as you want. As you can imagine, I did another condition here. So after 7 days, you can send another email or another message or in-app notification, and you can pretty much go as deep as you want. And you also can check if the invoice was paid, then cancel the automation and send them an email saying, thank you for the payment. So you don't have to do any of that manual follow-up work anymore. This is just one example of so many that you can accomplish with our automated workflows.